Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back, students. So, in this part 2 of lecture 9 of the programming fundamental course, we are going to discuss how to print the triangle or pyramid using void user defined function. So, a void function is a function having no return data. So, with that, let us continue with where we left off. So, so far we discussed how to construct and use void function in a program. We discovered the difference between value and a reference parameter. A value parameter gets the copy, whereas the reference variable gets the address of a location. And then we were exploring the reference parameter and the value returning function. So with that, let me directly go to that problem where we were printing this a triangle of steric or stars. So with that, let me revise what we done in the previous lecture. We declared a user defined function called print star. Print star is a void function, and you can see here that a void keyword or a reserved word will return nothing, so it will just print some star in a defined pattern. It is accepting two integer values. The first value is stored in a variable called blanks, whereas the other value is stored in a variable called star in lines. Both of these variables get a copy of the value that, or of the variable that from where this print star function was called. So initially, when the program start and this main functions, so you can now see that a main has a return type of int. It means that main will return an integer to the compiler, telling it that it's an end of a program. So you can see at the end of the program here that the main is returning 0 to the compiler, telling it that, so 0 is an integer telling it that it's an end of a program. So initially we declared three variables: the number of lines, counter, and number of blanks. All of them are integer. We printed a message to the user asking him or her to enter the number of lines, but it should be from 1 to 20 inclusive. So the user entered the number of lines. Remember, the number of lines are the lines on which the steric or star will be printed. So let's say the user has entered 21. So what will we have? So we have now a condition. We are using a while loop. While number of lines are less than 0 or number of lines are greater than 20. In our case, it is 21. So as it is greater than 20, so this condition is true. So we are going to execute the statement inside the body of the while loop, inside this opening and closing parenthesis. So we are going to tell the user number of lines should be between 1 and 20. Enter the number of star lines, that is, the range is 1 to 20 to be printed. So once again, the user enters the number of lines, but in this case we are going to enter let's say the number of lines as 20. So once again, the while loop will check the condition. While the number of line is less than 0, in this case it is not less than 0, and the number of lines is greater than 20, it is not greater than 20. So both of these conditions are false. So we move to the next line after the body of the for loop, which is we are going to display two lines, blank lines, and then we are going to assign number of blanks the value of 30. So the number of lines, remember, has the value of 20. The number of, so the 20 are the lines. So let me say these are the lines. L represent the number of lines, whereas B represent the number of blanks. So the number of lines are 20, whereas the number of blanks are 30. Counter initially is 1, but it will be incremented every time we execute this for loop. So initially it is 1. So let me say that let me declare a variable saying that counter is 1. So in the first case, as counter is 1, counter is less than or equal to number of lines. So number of lines are 20. Yes, it is less. So we are going to execute the body of for loop. So we are going to execute whatever is inside this opening and closing parenthesis. We are going to call the print star function, and we are going to pass the number of blanks, which is 30, and the counter, which is 1. So this 30 value and counter value will be passed as we call this print star function. So let us go to the print star function. So here is the print star function. So the number of blanks were 30 and the counter was 1. So a copy will be made. So a 30 will be stored here inside this blank variable, whereas the star line, which is counter, will be stored here, which is 1. So okay, once again we declared a local count variable. So remember, this count variable is invisible to the rest of the program. Similarly, this blank star lines are all local variable. So though these are local variables, so their visibility is only local to this print star function. So they are local variable. Alright, so with that we initialize count to 1. Count is less than or equal to blanks. Yes, because blank has the value of 30. So with that we are going to print a space and increment the counter, which becomes 2, while count is less than blank. Yes, still it is less than blank because 2 is far less than 30. So another space will be printed, and similarly we are going to increment this counter one by one. We are going to make it 3 and 4 and 5 and up to when it is 30. So when it is 30, so still the statement will be true. We are going to print a screen, but one time it will become 31. So at that case this will be incorrect, this statement. So we are going to move out of the body of for loop. In this case, as the for loop has only one statement, so no need to write opening and closing parentheses, but I recommend you to write these opening and closing parentheses. It is recommended. Here in this case we haven't used it, still it is okay, but I'll say always use opening and closing parentheses for clarity. So next we move on. We have another for loop, and inside this for loop once again we are initializing this count variable to the value of 1. 1 is less than equal to star line. So what is star line? Star line has a value of 1. So we print this static because star line has a value of 1, and count plus 1 will increment the value of count. It will become 2, and this condition will become false, and we are going to move ahead of this for loop, and we are going to print another line and go to the next line, and this function ends here, and the control will go back to the main function, where we are going to decrement the number of blanks. The number of blanks were 30, so now in this case they become 29, and we increment the counter. Okay, so we decrement the counter number of blanks, sorry, and we increment the counter becomes 2, and then we said counter is less than or equal to the number of lines, which is 30. Yes, so we once again enters into the body of for loop, and we call the print star function. This time we are passing the number of blanks. This time the value passed is 29 for the number of blanks, and 2 for counter, because we have decremented the number of blanks and we have incremented the counter. So we move on to this calling function, which is print star, and then here we get the value of 29. Remember, it is a copy, so the changes made here will be not reflected in the main program, whereas the number of star lines are 2. So we enter into the body of the print star function. Once again, count will be initialized. Count is initialized to 1. It is declared, then it is initialized to 1. Count is less than, yes, it is less than 29. So we print this blank space, increment the count, and we keep on printing this blank space. But remember that blank in this case is not 30, it is 29. After we have printed these 29 spaces, we are going to move to the next for loop and initialize count once again to 1. Count is less than number of star. Yes, it is less because the number of star is now 2. We print static and increment the counter count, which becomes 2, and then we once again check this condition. Count is less than, yes, 2 is less than equal to star line, which is 2. So once again we print the second star, and then for the third time this condition is false as the counter now has a value of 3. So 3 is not less than equal to 2, it is greater. So we move on to the next statement, which is cout endl. We go to the next line, and once again the body of the print star function is executed, and we move back to the main function where the number of blanks further gets decremented and the counter incremented. So, and once again this function will be called. So after running this function and after the execution of this complete program, you will see this pattern on the screen, just as I show you on the code blocks. So I hope that you understand this problem. I'll recommend you to go and write this program, type it, and then run it, compile it. If you have some errors, you can think over them, remove them, and this is how you learn programming, by doing practical real example. So with that, I'm going to end this lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture where we are going to discuss reference parameter. So till then, take care and Allah Hafiz.